French streamer died taking part in a live broadcast on
Kick streamer has passed away.
A French streamer has passed away in his sleep on stream.
Jean Parmenov.
Jean Parmenov.
Jean Parmenov.
Jean Parmenov.
Money and fame can bring the worst in people. Some streamers will do anything for views, even if it means ruining the life of an innocent man. Jean Parmenov was a broken and lonely man who was promised a better future, but instead was slowly tortured to death by his so-called friends. And it wasn't some underground broadcast either. They would constantly get 10,000 of viewers, peaking with 20k even. They were arguably the biggest streamers in the whole France. Just try to imagine thousands of people watching, laughing in chat and donating money to them to keep humiliating Jean. But what's even worse, Kick, the platform where these streams were broadcasted on, they knew exactly what was going on all along. And not only they didn't do anything about it, they even used Jean to promote their Kick merch. And now, when it's not so fun to torture a man to death and you have to meet real-life consequences, a man behind these streams plays a victim card and files a cyberbullying complaint. Now that's absolutely disgusting. Today, we are going to have a look at a very sad and depressing story of Jean Parmenov. And to understand the whole story, we first have to start from the beginning. Jean Parmenov, by his real name Raphael Greven, was a 41-year-old man. He didn't have any friends, nor he never had a relationship with a woman. He lived alone with his mom, didn't go to work, and lived off welfare money. And in 2018, he decided to give streaming a shot. He opened a Twitch account under username Jean Parmenov. He mostly played games like GTA or Fortnite, and he raged a lot. And even though Jean seems angry in these clips, he was overall pretty happy as now he has people to talk to in chat. Sure, 5 people isn't a lot, but for a lonely person like Jean, it was enough. And despite not a lot of people turning into his streams, he was going viral on TikTok, where people shared clips of his rages. It didn't take long and Jean was discovered by a big French streamer named the Kyrie78. He invited him for some games, and thanks to Jean's impulsive personality, Kyrie's chat really liked Jean.
Parler. Tu peux pas parler. Putain, sérieux, je t'entends que ça, putain, j'entends que toi. J'entends même plus mon jeu, gros.
Content of these collab streams consisted of constant rage baiting and trolling Jean, because it was very funny to see him rage. For example, people would send funny donations to troll Jean.
Ton chien il s'appelle comment?
Chouquette.
Chouquette.
Une femelle. Ouais.
Chad would call Jean old, they would make fun of his stutters, they would call him trash at the game. However, despite that, Jean understood his role in the streams. And nobody really likes to be punching back for Chad, but if that means you will get paid well, since a lot of people were sending Jean donations, and if you look at his stats, his streams really took off. He even doubled down on being that rage guy, and he created a YouTube channel, where the fact that he rages is basically the main content. And on these videos he would pull good views as well. And the streamer Kyrie, who Jean streamed with, would also give him some revenue from the stream, since he was making a lot of money from these collab streams with Jean. So nobody really knows what was happening inside of Jean's head, but from being super lonely and living off welfare's money, to making easily $10k a month, being an internet celebrity of some sort, and having people to talk to in chat and IRL, I think he might saw this as a good thing actually. But that was about to change. See, Kyrie had a secret. He was dating a minor, and when Jean found out about it, he was disgusted, and so he cut ties with Kyrie completely. And while people respected his decision, Jean's career, on the other hand, was about to be destroyed because of this. His business model was built on rage baits and overreactions, and Jean just simply cannot farm rage clips if there is no one to make him rage. He needed someone to stream with, a partner. The problem was that nobody from relevant streamers really wanted to, since Jean had pretty awful reputation due to his antics and because of associating with Kyrie in the first place. It seemed like Jean's story would end here, but there were 2 guys who took advantage of the situation. Their names were Safin and Owen. They already knew Jean and Jean knew them, as they were seen with him hanging out on Kyrie's streams. So I guess it was kinda natural to start streaming with them. It was a simple trade. Jean at the time had around 600k followers, while they had only something around 100k. Therefore, they would get exposure and easy content, and Jean on the other hand would have people to stream with, his career wouldn't die, and maybe they would even be big friends. They started doing content together, as always playing GTA, Fortnite and other games, while clip farming and rage baiting Jean.
Ah vas-y, putain, derrière toi, tu tiens même pas. Pourquoi il tire encore l'autre? Je vais mourir. Voilà. Bon, t'es sérieux, gros, ouais, putain.
Owen even decided to help Jean by running his social and posting clips, which then resulted in Jean's views to go from few hundred to 8,000 in a span of few days.
Puis après, il a regardé mes réseaux, il a dit ouais, t'as pas de réseau, t'as rien. Bon, à l'époque, les réseaux, ouais, je m'en foutais quoi. Moi je faisais mes trucs, le réseau, je savais pas. Avec le réseau, tu pouvais voir plus de monde. Ouais. C'est comme ça qu'il m'a demandé mes codes de Twitch, parce que de Twitter. Parce que avant j'avais Twitter, mais j'avais quoi, pas beaucoup quoi, 120 personnes quoi. J'ai vu tout mon entourage, et après en même pas une semaine, en 2 jours, je me suis dit, attends, c'est quoi ce bordel, 8000 personnes qui est venues sur mon live, je fais oh, ça a foutu quoi. Et je lui demande, ah bon, j'ai juste repartagé la game qu'on a fait ensemble, et puis ça revient plus aux gens, puis voilà, comme ça qu'on s'est lancé.
Owen and Safin often hang out with Jean after the stream. They talked in the voice channel or just played COD. And at that moment, Jean saw it as a miracle. He saw it as a big opportunity for his career, and he felt like he finally has friends.
J'étais sur mon live, un peu en train de m'embêter, hein, on va dire.
À eux.
Ouais, et on va dire qu'après le live, j'ai coupé le live, et puis on a fait un jeu on a fait Call of Duty, je crois. On a joué ensemble à Call of, et après on était sur le vocal. Je suis resté un peu avec le vocal pour parler avec eux, déballer mon sac, on va dire.
Ouais. For Jean, this was life-changing.
Ouais, donc tu pourrais dire que votre rencontre, ça a changé ta vie, quoi.
Voilà, oui, exactement.
After 3 months, Owen came up with an idea to make a streaming house, to broadcast together from there. And this is where the violence started, basically. After they moved to streaming house, they would mostly play games and rage bait Jean. But little by little, Owen and Safin were pushing the bar of what they can do to Jean. And with each new stream, it was getting worse and worse. It started off pretty lightly. In this clip, they hit him with these pool noodles. You can clearly see that Jean didn't really like that. And even though pool noodles don't really hurt, it was a beginning of something much more sinister. Now, I don't know how much I can show these clips without getting my channel terminated from YouTube, as it's literally a person getting tortured. But I'll try my best to give you full picture of what was going on these streams. Here you can see this guy punching Jean with boxing gloves, while Jean just screams. Then they spray him with a paintball gun, and while Jean is screaming at them, they just dance. This is awful, but it didn't stop there. In this clip, Owen watches Safin stream himself drifting, speeding, and taking road bumpers on purpose, while this whole time he had Jean in the trunk.
Je sais pas, mais il saute au plafond. Regarde le dos d'âne à 80.
One thing they really liked doing to Jean was choking, but in a special way. They would grab and squeeze his thyroid, which not only is painful as hell, it also can reduce blood flow to your brain, it can block airflow and can be fatal even. So it's easy to say it's dangerous as fuck. But it was way worse, and probably is even the reason why they were doing it in the first place. Jean Permanov has a thyroid gland disorder, and he takes medication for it. I wasn't able to find exactly which disorder is it, but it can be only these two from the following options. First, his thyroid is hyperactive and it produces too much hormones, which makes his heart rate faster and can bring to hypertension. Second option is his thyroid is not active enough and it makes his heart rate slower with an irregular heartbeats. So Owen and Safin were strangling him and were doing their thyroid challenges, as they call it. Basically, they were putting a lot of pressure on the area where his health problems are from and making it way worse than it already was. That is just straight up evil. I'm going to play the clips now. They can be pretty disturbing, so if you don't want to look at it, you can skip to this timestamp. I'm gonna give you like 3 seconds for you to skip. Okay, that's 2. Alright, let's go.
Le temps libre, tu te rends pas compte du nombre de personnes qui aimeraient être...
Ensuite, il nous a rencontrés.
Mais non.
Ah, mais Ouais, vas-y.
Regarde, là, les lives, ça
Attends.
And let me remind you, this was going on for 3 long years. The level of insanity rised with each stream, and the clips got way worse. And you might have a lot of questions. For example, why doesn't John just leave? I mean, he lived somehow before he started streaming, and surely he doesn't want to live like this, being tortured for views. Another question is, how does Kick allow this on their platform? They had 10k concurrent viewers on average, peaking with 20k. That's a lot. I think they were the biggest streamers in France at some point. So Kick, surely, must be aware of what's happening on these streams. And lastly, why in the world would Owen and Safin do this? Let's start with Owen and Safin. Simply put, where is demand, there is supply. And I was really thinking hard on why do people watch this content. And I feel like humans are drawn to shocking, dangerous content because it evokes strong emotions in them. And the more you watch this, the more desensitized you become. And at some point, people see it more as entertainment. They watch this so they could feel better about themselves. Also, if you see thousands of people chatting in chat, donating, laughing, you feel less responsible for what's happening on the screen. It's called group psychology. The internet creates emotional distance. Watching through the screen makes it easier to perceive abuse as less real. And that's absolutely messed up. 10,000 people on average were watching Jean get tortured live for 3 years, and there was only one investigation launched. Only one. And it was dismissed soon after. But while the investigation was ongoing, they had one viewer call them, and this is what he had to say.
On les encule, nous. Arrêtez de faire les salopes, wesh. Arrêtez de faire les salopes. Ouais, pendant 3 semaines, vous êtes un Mediapart par-ci, les médias, on dirait des salopes. Vous avez peur.
Après le dernier live, il a quand même pris une rafale de claques à 90%.
Frérot, c'est trop, revenez.
So you can clearly see that some people do find this funny. They see it as entertainment. That's just insane. Another reason why Owen and Safin were doing this was money. Now, when they started, they had deal with Kick, but I wasn't able to find on how much was it exactly. However, when Kick saw that they pulled big numbers, they offered them 600,000 euro. Yeah. They do bring this number up here and there, but there wasn't really any official statement that the number is this high. However, I do believe they get paid ridiculous money. Kick is known for giving insane numbers in these contracts, so take that number, and plus they would get a lot from donations as well. Simply put, Safin and Owen were filthy rich. Okay. This method was insane money printing machine for them, and Jean was only a tool for them. I doubt they saw him as a human being even.
Y a rien de malsain à détruire JP pour du buzz. Et ça, c'est la phrase du live, les amis. Merci pour cette intervention.
For example, in this clip, Jean announces his dog's death, who he loved with all his heart.
À la porte, quand je vais rentrer à la maison, voilà, ça me fait chier. Sérieux? Moi je t'aimais bien.
How can he laugh at someone's dead dog? Jean cried as he was saying it, and these two dumbasses just laugh about it. That's crazy. And in this clip, Owen insults Jean's mom by calling her a bitch.
Je lui avais dit, écoute, qu'est-ce que tu fous avec eux? Et puis, d'après ce que j'ai compris, il était un peu bloqué avec eux, quoi.
Tu veux qu'on respecte tes parents, on les respecte. On respecte les nôtres.
Non, après je t'explique, parce que je t'ai dit que sa mère c'était une grosse chienne. Attends, mais il y a un fondement derrière, frérot. Ta mère, elle te fait... Frérot, elle voit qu'elle a un fils handicapé de 40 ans. Bah, il avait 40 ans quand elle était handicapé. Putain. Mais frérot, t'es...
So why in the world would Jean stay? Why couldn't he just leave? Well, technically he could, but what is he gonna do? He gets paid good money. It's not public how much he was getting exactly from the 600k euro revenue, but it was definitely not a small amount. And if he leaves, he won't be able to make this much money ever in his life. He would go back to his mom and live off welfare money again. And he felt like if that happened, he would be a complete failure. We can't forget that for the most part of his life, he was lonely. As I said before, he never really had friends.
Moi, le view, elle est...
À Metz.
À Metz,
Ouais.
ok. Oui, donc ça fait quand même...
Je suis originaire de Metz.
D'accord.
Voilà, j'ai passé 44 ans à Metz. Et puis 44 ans à Metz, bon, je sortais pas trop, j'essayais de manger chez moi, je restais dans ma chambre, j'essayais devant l'ordinateur.
At first, I'm pretty sure Owen and Safin wouldn't treat Jean too bad. Sure, they would make fun of him on the streams, but that was just content. Then they would probably just get a beer and hang out, as they used to do before in the voice channels, to make him feel wanted, to gain his trust. But I'm sure somewhere down the line, they stopped and it turned into just purely humiliating Jean.
Oh putain, c'est devenu un ventilateur. Oh putain, le ventilateur.
Jean wasn't doing this for himself. He was doing it for the better future. He wanted to build a house, start a family, and live a better life. Because up to this point, he felt like he's failing in life and this is his only chance.
Moi, ce qui me préoccupe en ce moment, c'est de laisser une trace, on va dire, un enfant, quoi.
Ouais.
Tu sais, que j'ai peut-être un fils ou une fille, et puis qui a perdu...
Oui. Tu te vois comment, toi, dans 10 ans?
Dans 10 ans, femme, enfant, maison, avoir assez d'argent pour voyager, d'avoir mon père, ma mère à côté de moi, mes frères et sœurs. Peut-être acheter un terrain et puis construire plein de maisons pour que la famille...
Un petit hameau familial.
Exactement.
Owen and Safin knew that this is his plan. They manipulated him into thinking that if he leaves, he will never have a chance to start a family, have wife, kids, he will die alone. They made it seem like they're giving him a chance of his life, so he better continue streaming with them. There are also some other forms of manipulation going on, because Jean would get constantly humiliated on the streams. So you can only imagine what happened off camera. In these clips, he gets told that he's old, he's a failure, dumb, and it's honestly disgusting.
T'es vraiment un bon à rien, fils de putain de JP. Hein. Tu sabotes tout, ça, le fils de pute. Hein. Tu sers vraiment à rien. Hein. Tu es le plus gros fils de pute que j'ai jamais vu de ma vie. Sale fils de pute. Y a que Koudou qui est bien.
Oh le Corse. Oh le Corse. Absolu de cinéma.
C'est bien. T'es énervé? On dirait, hein. Bon, je sais pas, t'as peut-être envie de gigoter ou je sais pas, mais rien que ton regard, comment t'étais hier, en mode où tu me fusilles, tu crois ça c'est normal? Rien que ça. Je sais pas si c'est normal, non. Mais tu t'écoutes pas en fait quand tu parles. Le manque de respect, mais tu parles, c'est un truc de dingue. Les fils de pute, les nique ta mère, les j'en sais rien, les tout ça là. C'est un homme ça? Est-ce que ça c'est un homme? Est-ce que tu te rends compte, JP, que t'as 45 ans? Je sais pas si tu...
And when you're constantly fed this information, you start believing it. So yet again, another reason to stay, because here you can at least make some money.
Est-ce que JP, tu restes uniquement au local pour l'argent?
Ouais.
Et j'en ai une deuxième. Est-ce que si tu pourrais partir, tu partirais?
Ouais.
S'il n'y aurait pas les contrats et tout.
À l'heure actuelle, est-ce que tu aimerais arrêter les lives?
Ça dépend des trucs, ouais. Des fois oui.
And of course, with all that pressure, there were multiple times when Jean just had enough and he decided to leave the stream.
Décolle, tu veux tricher? Tu veux tricher? T'as vu comme t'es un tricheur, sale pute? T'as pas le droit, vas-y, j'arrête le jeu. J'arrête le jeu, putain. Ouais, je joue le jeu. On me met des cartes, je fais rien. Ta gueule, je te dis, putain. J'ai des médicaments. Je te dis, prends le bonbon. J'ai des médicaments à prendre. Je vais pas prendre d'autres médicaments. Il y a un putain de truc rouge sur ton truc de médicaments de merde. Mais ta mère, c'est des bonbons à sucre. S'il te plaît. Je m'en bats les couilles. Ok? Je m'en bats les couilles.
Koudou, tu l'as mangé, ça a quel goût?
Je m'en bats les couilles. Et arrête de me taper, fils de putain. Arrête de me taper. Tu m'as tasé pour rien, ta mère la pute. J'ai des médicaments. Tu m'as tasé pour rien. J'ai agi sur le putain de cœur. Alors maintenant, arrête. Qu'est-ce qu'il nous fait le mec de... On va jouer là maintenant. Tu diras que je m'en bats les couilles du jeu de la clope.
il a pas le choix. Il a pas le choix. Il a pas le choix. Même,
J'ai toujours les choix.
même ta communauté, regarde, il a pas le choix.
La communauté
Rouek couché. Regarde, t'as vu comment. Ah, mais c'est pas moi qui. Oh, non, tu le gardes, tu le gardes, tu le gardes. Tu le gardes, interdiction, sacrilège. T'as pas le droit, t'as pas le droit de le retirer. T'as pas le droit de le retirer. Non, t'as pas le droit de le retirer. T'as pas le droit de le retirer. Tu bouges pas. Tu bouges pas. La tête de homme, tu bouges pas. La tête de homme, tu vas au bout. Tu vas au bout. Tu vas au bout. Tu vas au bout. Pour une meuf, la tête de homme, tu le mets.
Pour une meuf, non, non.
Oui, 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 c'est pour une meuf. C'est pour une meuf, c'est pour une meuf. Ne change pas de sujet. C'est pour une meuf, c'est pour une meuf. Enlève ta main, enlève ta main, enlève ta main.
But I quickly put him back to chair again. At one point he did leave the facility midstream, and so Owen called his friend to take his keys away from the apartment.
JP là il a bougé, il est parti. Donc il a quitté là pour rien, c'est lui qui sabote. On lui a rien dit, il lui a rien fait. Il sabote, je sais pas, il fait le malin, il est pris, il est parti. Je veux que tu récupères les clés de l'appartement, de la voiture, qui paye le loyer qui manque, et il peut partir. Il peut se mettre au bord de la route, manger et rentrer chez lui à Metz. Voilà. Ouais, comme ça, pour rien, il s'est levé, il a pas assumé le défi, c'est une grosse pute. Voilà, juste comme ça. Donc voilà, réquisition, mets-toi devant l'appartement, réquisition, gentiment. C'est là, tu vois, là il parle du local. Réquisition, gentiment, tu vois, il paye sur le loyer qu'il a pas payé. Tu récupères les doubles clés et puis il rentre chez sa mère, la pute. Tout simplement. Voilà.
They also tried to cut Jean from the outside world as much as possible, and we know this because one of his friends tried to call him multiple times, but always someone else picked up and told him to not call again.
Plusieurs fois, j'ai essayé de le contacter et quelqu'un me répondait. C'était pas lui. Quelqu'un me répondait en me disant arrête de poser des questions, laisse-le tranquille, il est bien avec nous. Une fois, j'ai réussi à l'avoir. Une fois, c'était vraiment lui. Je lui avais dit, écoute, qu'est-ce que tu fous avec eux? Et puis, d'après ce que j'ai compris, il était un peu bloqué avec eux.
Jean was a broken man with a dream. He thought if he goes through hell, then one day he will have a chance to start a family and live a happy life. And at some point he was manipulated so hard, he was so deep in, that he could not go back to his old life. It just didn't make sense for him. And when he decided he actually wanted to do that, he didn't have power to do so. And now we go to the last question. What in the world is happening with Kek? Now this is where I have the biggest problem. Sure, Owen and Safin are ones to blame, but when you give people a platform where this degeneracy is allowed, why are we surprised even? I won't go into details about all the stuff that is happening on this god-forgotten platform, but just for the sake of bigger picture. On this platform we have Gambling Addict, PDF Files, Jack Doherty's and Johnny Somalis, who are constantly breaking laws left and right for clips, and Kik doesn't do anything about it most of the time. But what's even worse in this case, Kik not only was aware of the situation with Jean, they directly engaged with the content. They promote streams and even used Jean to promote their goddamn merch. Now, after seeing this, I really hope Kik is gonna have massive lawsuit coming their way. This is S-tier disgusting. Basically, if it makes money, Kik will look the other way. Give Owen great deal to motivate him to continue torturing Jean, and Jean is trapped by constant humiliations and reminders that he has no other option. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's about to get really dark. Because on 10th of August 2025, Owen would announce a 10-day marathon. And for Jean, it didn't really go well. It was 10 days of straight up torture on steroids basically. As with people watching these streams, you always have to bring in something new to the table. You always have to raise bar of violence and shock value to keep viewers interested in the content and entertained. They even had Jean chained at some point. Now they don't even hide the fact that he's just a dog to them. They would even go as far as depriving Jean of sleep by constantly waking him up. Anytime it looked like Jean is gonna fall asleep, they threw a random object at him so he would wake up. And this is especially dangerous for Jean's heart, as sleep deprivation can lead to increased blood pressure, reduced oxygen supply, higher risk of heart attack, and so much more. There is dozen problems that come with not being able to sleep. Because shocker, your body needs to actually rest sometimes. What's crazy to me is that Owen and Safin were smart enough to think about what's gonna happen if Jean will maybe die, who knows? Which is so crazy to openly discuss when the person you're talking about sits right next to you. And eventually they make him say that if he dies, it's not their fault basically.
Que si demain il meurt en plein live, c'est dû à son état de santé de merde et pas nous.
Non, non.
Comme ça, non, du tout. Comme ça, non, non.
They did that to maybe be not responsible after, but that's just ridiculous. It's just so bizarre. I feel like Owen and Safin completely lost touch with reality, and they genuinely think that JP is not human anymore. The way they treat him is just, I don't know, insane. During this marathon, they snatched JP's phone and they went through messages with his mom, where he tells her that he wants to leave. And so they decide to read messages out loud, mock him and laugh at him.
Maman, comment tu vas? Coincé pour un moment avec son jeu de mort. Je te regarderai ce soir. Je pense que là, ça va trop loin, elle a dit.
On 18th of August, Owen wakes up and as usual throws a bottle at JP. However, this time JP doesn't react. So Owen walks over to him and starts slapping him. Still no reaction. Then they realize that Jean probably died and stream cuts off. The clip goes extremely viral. It's all over social media. It's everywhere basically.
And all the way through it, apparently constant little reminders from Owen explaining to JP that he couldn't give up even if it meant Owen ending up in prison to force him to stay. The only escape offered was to kiss the other vulnerable person with tongue for 3 minutes.
It's very clear this isn't a man they respected. This is someone they treated like a human punching bag.
It also got French national television talking about it.
Il est mort lundi matin dans ce lit, on le voit au premier plan, après 298 heures de direct, 12 jours non-stop, devant des milliers d'abonnés.
Sa mort en direct sur une plateforme vidéo a choqué la France. À longueur de live, Raphaël Graven, alias Jean Pormanov, subissait coups et humiliations de la part de 2 acolytes.
All the accounts were banned of both Twitch and Kick. French government opened a case to investigate his death, and it looks like Safin and Owen will finally pay for their actions. Owen and Safin of course post a very heartbroken message about how much they miss JP, how they saw him as a good friend, and now they're really sad that he's gone.
Absolute cinéma.
From now on, I will use this little clip of Owen to point out how ridiculous this whole situation is. Over a span of goddamn 3 years, you treat JP like an animal, humiliating and torturing him for money and fame. And when you're mad with consequences, you try to pretend like it didn't happen? That's just insane. Owen, you're not getting away with this. Safin and Owen then go to court and they try to play it off as it was all consensual and it was just all acting. Oh yeah, Owen, yeah, you're right, it was all just acting. But you know what, dude? I spent some time watching your streams, as guess what? All VODs are still public and findable. So please, Owen, can you tell me what is this?
JP rigole pas trop.
Oh ouais, ça aurait pu être drôle. Mais JP c'est vraiment abusé.
Ouais, on est
Genre,
trop
vraiment abusé. Il est tout le temps triste, il est énervé.
Ouais, bah après c'est un peu notre chien, tu vois.
Ouais, mais c'est abusé.
C'est un peu notre manière de gagner de l'argent. Dès que le live il est fini, on l'attache, on le rentre dans sa cage.
Pourquoi vous défendez ça? C'est vraiment une dinguerie.
Ouais, voilà.
C'est quoi le chien?
Voilà. Ouais, il est en larmes, vous le voyez pas mais il est en larmes.
What can you say? It seems like it kinda contradicts what you said in court, right? So I think it's safe to say that you're shitting in your mouth a little bit, you know? Owen, hear this. I really hope from the bottom of my heart that you and Safin and your whole crew are gonna rot in the goddamn French prison. I would even go as far as reopening Bastille Fortress and throwing you fuckers in for the rest of your fucking life, dude. I really hope they're gonna make an example from all of you so no one will think of doing this shit ever again. You took an old lonely man with heart problems, put him under constant stress and humiliation, and then tried to play it off like it was all consensual. You took keys from his apartment when he wanted to leave. You told him that he's a failure every single fucking day. You made him feel like he has no choice. Dude, I'm so glad police has access to hours upon hours of footage to learn how exactly you treated him so they could build really strong case against you, my brother. And guess what, dude? This is it, you're not getting out of this. Okay, but on more positive note, Aiden Ross and Drake paid for the funeral. Maybe it's because they have big shares in the Kick company, and from what I've heard, I think Drake is even a co-owner or something, but I'm not really sure, so don't quote me on this. Most likely, pretty much this is just damage control, so people wouldn't hate Kick as much, but still, it's a good thing that they gonna pay for the funeral at the end of the day. After all that, results came from Jean's autopsy, and direct cause of death was due to his heart problems, and not due to Owen's streams. That might be a little W for Owen and Safine's case, however, I call that BS. Look, for example, when a person doesn't treat his health well, maybe he's fat, doesn't work out, eats only fast foods, and then this very person gets sick, and let's say he dies due to getting sick. And I say it's not only because he got sick, it's mostly because due to his bad lifestyle, he wasn't able to fight the disease. You know what I'm saying here? And this is exactly the same situation. You constantly push Jean's limit, putting heavy pressure on his heart by not letting him sleep, always keeping his heart rate high by putting him in stressful situations. You were literally doing those thyroid challenges, which is where his problem even started. And then all of a sudden you're surprised that his heart couldn't keep up? Wow. So no, I call it BS. Owen and Safine were present at the funeral, and they posted this. That's Jean's mom, and apparently she supports Owen and Safine in this case, not his own son, which to me is absolutely wild. Her claim is that Jean's heart was very weak, so it's not their fault. Okay, but then you have clip like this. In my book, this doesn't really add up. I can't imagine in what world this is normal. So I believe Owen and Safine, and now this is my personal opinion, you know, allegedly, they either blackmailed her mom somehow or they offered her a lot of money. Allegedly, okay? I'll say it again. And due to all hate Owen was getting in his DMs, ladies and gentlemen, he filed a cyberbullying complaint. Yeah.
Absolute cinema.
I don't even know what to say at this point. No way, after 3 years of treating Jean like this, you're gonna pull out a victim card. No, that's completely crazy.
Absolute cinema.
So, what's gonna happen next? Well, we will have to wait for how the case turns out. And of course, I'll keep you updated. But I really hope all parties are gonna be held accountable, including Kick, because no way you're gonna promote your own merch using a man who's being tortured live. I have zero sympathy towards Owen and Safine, and I really hope they will get what they deserve. And that's it from me. If you enjoyed the video, then make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and comment. Bye bye.